record on this computer. Okay. Thank you one and all for joining me this morning. I'm Eric Meeks, and we have on board with us a couple of the agents with Remax Desert Properties, Arthur, Blair, and Alex. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Today's training session, as you know, I try to do this in an hour or less, and we may only be about a half hour this one. We'll see how things go. I welcome all your questions as we go through it, and some of what I'm going to do today, I'm sure that you have already encountered before in your sales careers, because you're all polished salespeople in your own right, and we're going to review this here. The best training manual I ever read on actual closing, teaching me the verbiage of how to close a deal, is The Secrets of Closing the Sale by Zig Ziglar. So today's 10 closes, I've picked out of chapter 1 from that book. And if you ever have time to read the entire book, I'll tell you, I found it a great read. I know it's a little bit 1950s Southern boy charm, old school in it, because that's what Zig Ziglar was. Okay, and these days, by the new millennia standards of what's socially acceptable and politically correct for women's and men's roles may not exactly fit, especially in a world with LGBTQ and Proud Boys and a great mixture of right and wrong in the world and how we treat each other. But I still believe the basic premise of the closes work, and just adjust each type of close that I'm going to discuss in here to your own personal situations. And no matter what the mix-up of the couple that we're talking to, there still tends to be a more dominant partner and a more subservient partner. And it can still apply. And sometimes through this, and I'll tell you the first close that I'll do if I'm ever in a situation where I can't tell who the decision maker is in a group, and this has worked for me several times, especially when you're dealing with two couples, okay, and you've got 4 and 4, or 2 and 2, okay, for it, I'll just look at them and say, hey, folks, I'm sorry, I can't tell something here and I need your help. Who's the decision maker in the group? And I kid you not, you will see 3 out of 4 people turn and look at one person in the group. And you go, oh, hey, there you go. Nice to meet you. What's your name? And you start right there. And it's an amazingly simple magic formula. And if you're ever in a couple, it's okay to do this and to look at the husband and wife or the couple of whatever makeup they are and say, hey, look, I need to know something. Who's the decision maker? Okay, now what's the most important thing to you in this transaction? And I'll tell you that question right there, what's the most important thing to you in this transaction, is the first tool that you need to put in your tool bag so that you can close them at some point. So while the closes are great, and we're going to discuss those here in about 30 seconds moving forward, the first thing you need to do is to be a good listener and a good question asker. I learned it originally on a car lot, where I would ask 3 questions of every person I would encounter. And those questions are, what's the most important thing that you're looking for? What do you mean by that? And why, of all the things that you could have picked in relation to this purchase, did you pick that thing? And while we're selling homes, you can look at what's the most important thing to you in this home. I want to make sure I get a single family home with no HOA, with located in Palm Desert. Okay, whatever it is. They're going to rattle off 1 or 2 or 3 things that they find are important. Okay, well, what do you mean by that? Well, I want a 3-bedroom home. I got a bunch of kids. I got, I got a dog. I need a single family home. I got an old beater truck that I don't want an HOA telling me I can't park, out in the parking garage or whatever it is on it. Okay. And one last question, forgive me, and I'll say this with people. If I feel the need to ask permission, which is often when I'm talking with people, I'll say to them, I'm going to put my salesman hat here on for a second. And all that does is kind of trigger with them that this is a more serious question. And that's okay, because that's what I want them to do. And I'll say, why, of all the things that you could have picked, did you pick those things? And it'll usually come down to some what we call 3rd level thinking in their head, look, I have that truck that I talk about, and the last place I lived, they didn't like it. They couldn't do anything about it, but I didn't like them leaving notes on my truck. I didn't like my neighbors complaining about my kids. And my wife wants it to be easier because if somebody ever knocks on the door and complains, she's the one who has to deal with it. So we don't want an HOA. And right there, we really got them to admit why they want what they want. Now, you don't always get that answer, and that's going to bring us to our first close right here. And that's called the snooker close. The snooker close is what a buyer does to you when they're blowing smoke. Okay, when they're just pretending like they're not really interested. A snooker is a pool, a game of pool word or phrase, you see there. And a snooker is somebody who can fake you into believing that they're not very good when they are. Okay, you've been snookered, okay, is how it's used. In relation to a buyer-seller relationship, the number one snooker that a buyer will tell you is, I'm just shopping. Right? Haven't we all told that to a salesman? I don't care if it's at Penny's or Macy's or somewhere in the mall. We go into a place and we're looking at the products on the shelf or hanging on the racks or whatever they are. And some salesman comes up, typically a car lot. We all do this. You're reading the sticker on some car that you like, and the salesman comes up, hi there, how you doing? How can it be? And you go, I'm just looking. Right? And the fact is, we are just looking. And the buyers who tell us this is just looking until they find the right product or the right salesman to help them find the right product. And the best thing to do here is just say, well, I understand. And that phrase, I understand, is probably one of the best defenses. When I had it explained to me, it was like, you're a matador. I understand, and you're just waving your red cape. Okay, they're feeding you the bull on the other side, and you're just letting the bull pass you on each side. Okay, I understand. I agree. Hey, man, I'm not looking to push you into anything you don't want to do, but can I ask you, what do you like about that car? Or what are you looking for in a car? And you ask a gentle question, okay, that hopefully just opens a door. That's how you overcome the snooker close, because the buyer is going to try to close you on it. In real estate sales, the most common snooker that we hear is, I'm not in the market right now, right? I haven't talked to my lender yet. I'm shopping for a friend. Okay, I don't know how many of you people ever shopped for a friend for their house, but I'll tell you, I never did it unless that friend really gave me an indication they would buy, and they only came to me because they knew I was a realtor. So I don't know how many non-realtors truly get asked to shop for homes for their friends, but I would think it's a very low number. So the snooker closing, how we overcome it. I'm not in the market right now. Well, that's okay. Rather than asking them why they're not, which is a valid question, but it's a little more put offish, I would suggest on overcoming that snooker to say, okay, well, if you could find the right home, what would it look like? And then you shut up, just like how I did there. Okay, which is another key to closing. You've got to know how to ask a closing question and then how to be quiet. So if you found the right home, what would it look like? Okay, and whatever they say, okay, a second closing, in each one of these steps is a close in and of itself. While I'm focusing here on these 10 to walk us through this process of closing a deal, okay, realize that each one of these questions I asked is a close. You close somebody with a lot of little questions till you finally get down to the big questions. Did we find the right home? Would you like to buy it? But we have to walk them up to that. And you close people and you change people's minds with questions. Statements seldom change somebody's mind. Statements can sell, can show value, but you pull people further along with a question. So we've gone through the snooker close, and we've got them to say, okay, well, if you found the right home, what would it look like? Okay, and you could ask some of those what, and why questions. Okay, why do you pick that for a home? What do you mean by that? Just to get them to continue talking a little bit. And you can always see that I've always heard it said, and believe it too, kids are great closers. So imagine yourself when you were 5 years old trying to hit your dad up for the Red Ryder BB gun, or the wagon that you wanted to pull around, the sled that you wanted, the Xbox game, depending on the age of what you were and what generation you grew up in, but kids will ask questions and ask questions and ask questions and keep working on their parents till finally they give in. Because most parents, if they can afford what the kid wants and it's not a ridiculous jetpack or a hover car, will eventually get their kids what they want if their kids are good. And just like that, we've got to get our clients what they want. Okay, now, the bump close. This is one that in the book, The Secrets of Closing the Sale, okay, which I got my copy, okay. This is one that's used by a wife in the book. And the bump close, what it comes down to, and they're talking 1960s real estate in Dallas, Texas, okay, in the book that they've got here. And they're finding a home for about $70,000. Okay, and I know that doesn't buy much single-family home in our market. Let's say it's 300,000 or 400,000 is a typical sale. 500,000 to 700,000 is a fairly common sale. Okay, and this here, and then we go up from there. But in those days, a nice single-family home in Dallas, Texas, was around $60,000, $70,000. And the wife, who was a bit of a salesman herself, the husband, who was Zig Ziglar, he's describing his own situation here. She said, okay, honey, so she's supposed to go look for a home while he starts working for Mary Kay Cosmetics. Okay, because that's Zig Ziglar transferred from being a realtor, Bible salesman, encyclopedia salesman, pots and pan, door-to-door salesman, all these things, to becoming a sales manager for Mary Kay Cosmetics. And therefore, he was moving to Dallas, Texas. So he's told his wife, honey, you work with the realtor and go look for homes. They're living in a hotel room at that point. Well, they've just moved there. And she's like, okay, so somewhere between $60,000 and $70,000 would be okay, honey, right? And he's like, yes, that's your budget. Go see what you can find. And she's like, well, let me ask you this. Remember how I said you ask a question before going for a close? Her question was, let me ask you this, sweetheart. What if I found just the right home and it didn't need anything? How much could we spend then? This is the bump. She's going in for the bump. And that created a whole nother conversation because Zig Ziglar wanted a swimming pool, and ideally it was a swimming pool shaped like an arrow for some reason. If you notice, for some reason he liked arrows. And if you look at his book here, you've got the arrow, okay, on it. He wanted a place where he could have his own private office and write a book that he wanted to write. He hadn't written The Secrets of Closing the Sale yet. Okay, and I forget the third thing, but there was one more. Oh, he wanted a circular driveway. Okay, that was it. For some reason, he thought a bit of prestige came with a circular driveway. So a circular driveway, an arrow-shaped swimming pool, and an office to write a book. And she said, well, honey, if it had just the right stuff, and I mean just the stuff that you like, what could we spend? And they had that husband and wife discussion, okay, that ended up on about an additional $20,000. And she said, okay. But she didn't stop. And she went for one more. Okay, so if it had all those things and it also had the stuff that I want, could we go a little more? And he was like, whoa, you haven't even found the house yet. Okay, and you're trying to bump me on my price. And he said, honey, you go take a look, and I'll tell you, I'll be reasonable if you bring back something fair. Okay, so she takes off and goes looking at it. Okay, and that day he goes to work. He comes home, and he describes his wife, who he calls the little redhead. And remember, I said this book is 1950s, 1960s stereotypical of the South with a Southern gentleman and a wife. So he calls his wife the little redhead, and he calls her honey and sweetie and all those things in there. Doesn't quite fit today's world, but in 1968, which is when this book is written, or this story is being told, it fits. So he comes home and he talks about his wife sitting on the hotel room bed, and they haven't put any quarters in it, and she's so darn excited the bed is vibrating. Okay, and she's like, honey, I found the perfect house. You got to see it. You got to see it. And he's like, okay, well, tell me about it. And she tells him about how it's got this great kitchen and it's in the perfect neighborhood and it's here and there, and it's got all that stuff that she wants. Doesn't mention a thing that he wants. And he's like, well, honey, that sounds like a fantastic house. But how much is it? And she doesn't answer that question. And this is where it's okay to be a little deaf sometimes. And as salespeople, we have to be a little deaf. And she goes again and tells him how there's room for a dog and it's got a great fenced yard and beautiful landscaping and all these other things in a 2-car garage and that there. Well, honey, how much is it? And finally, she confesses that it's in the $100,000 plus range. And if you remember, they were looking at 60 to 70 with maybe another 20 if it was perfect. And he's like, sweetie pie, that just isn't, in our budget. You got to come see it. It's a perfect, you're going to love it. What spouse doesn't finally do for their spouse? If they can at all, and they got to appear reasonable what they're doing. So they decide they're going to go to sleep on it that night and go take a look tomorrow. This is where the ownership close comes in, okay, as we're moving through these. Because the next day, and I believe most of you have heard of the ownership close. The ownership close is not that fantastical, okay, of a close, okay? But it's a very simple one, and I suggest every salesperson use this close when they're doing their showing of the home. The ownership close is basically when you walk through and you see that beautiful kitchen. Can't you imagine yourself cooking here? Don't you see room for all of your dishes on display in these glass-lined shelves? Don't you love that island in the middle of the kitchen where you can face your guests and talk to them at Thanksgiving time? Don't you see it? And a 2-car garage. And this is where she got very, very smart. Because realize this home didn't have anything that Zig wanted in the home. It had all the stuff that she wanted. The beautiful kitchen, the great landscaping, the drapes that she loved, the flooring that she adored, all of those things for it. But not a single thing was in it for Zig. So when it came to the driveway, she pointed to just a regular lawn driveway and said, sweetheart, can't you see here there's room for your circular driveway to go right here? We'll put it in as soon as we close escrow. But it's a perfect spot for it. Smart, huh? And then they go to the garage. And there's a spot where there's an old tool shed that had been drug away. You could still see the little remains of the outline of the dirt on the floor. Okay, where the little tool stuff had been right in there. And it's got a little cubby hole with a window in it, about 10 by 11 feet. And she says, and here's the perfect spot for you to build that office that you want to write that book. And then they go in the backyard. And there's just a nice backyard, but regular grass, some shrubs and trees around and stuff like that. And here's that perfect spot for you to build that swimming pool that you'd like, and you can put the arrow going right towards our bedroom. It would be fantastic. Don't you think, honey? That's the ownership close, where everything that you point out in the home needs to be a nice, gentle suggestion that they already own it, that they could see themselves using it, that the benefits will be entirely for them, right? You've all used the ownership close before, right? A head nod or two? I know you have. Maybe you don't have your sounds on. Oh, there we go. Blair's hearing. Okay. So we've got some. Okay, so what's the general response? Oh, I see I forgot to capitalize something here. What's the general response after the ownership close? And this one you've got to be very gentle on. Okay, the ownership close is what's commonly called in sales as a takeaway. Okay, the embarrassment close is, and the wife used it here, which makes it easier. Usually after the ownership close, you're going to get the objection on price. right? Because we know we're showing them a house that's 30 or 40 grand over what they said they really wanted to spend, even with their $20,000 bump that they talked about that they didn't tell you and me about. They may have talked to each other about, but remember, they're still trying to snooker us. So they're only telling us about that $60,000 or $70,000 price tag, okay, that they said they would pay. Maybe for us, it's a $250,000 to $300,000 price tag in today's market. But we know the house that they want's really $350,000. So we've done the ownership closes. We walked through them, and they drug their feet, and they really like it. We can read people's, behaviors. They ain't running away. They're not sitting there saying, hey, look, I'm getting back in the car. This is a bunch of BS. They're in there looking, which means they like it. But even after your best ownership closes that you used it, they still say, yeah, man, but the price is $350,000. I told you I only really wanted to spend about $275,000. Okay, and we're going to combine two here. But the first one you do, and you've got to do this one and then pivot quickly, because if you let this one drag out, it will hurt you. But when you're doing a takeaway, you do it and then you pivot. And that's the key here. Okay, the embarrassment is closed. Well, yes, sir, I understand, but forgive me for reading people's body languages a little bit. I've been doing this, I know, not forever, but for a good while. But I sense between husband and wife here that she really likes it, and you really like it and like her liking it, but the price ain't right. Am I reading you correct? And you see what I did there? I put them in the picture, and then I pulled back just ever so quickly. You like it, she likes it, you like her liking it, but the price is too much. And they'll go, yeah, that's it. Okay. You say, well, is it worth a little extra? Because we can negotiate this. Is it worth a little extra to have a happy wife over just a wife? You just put a big weight on that guy's shoulder. And I'll tell you, the wife right there, she may be hiding the smile, but she's liking that. And I say wife, and again, remember, this can fit any sort of couple. And many times the people say, oh, you can't do that to my husband. That's not right. He works hard for his money. And it could be a two-guy couple. Okay, whatever it is. Whoa. It's okay. And you say, look, I understand, and I apologize if I went too far. This is where you got to move in and move out real quick. Okay? I just wanted to illustrate a point, because you said you were willing to spend 60 to 70, and I got a feeling there might have been a little wiggle room. Most people don't come out and show me all their cards. Okay, so there might have been a little wiggle room if it had had a chef's kitchen or the pool already in or the circular driveway or whatever it is, okay, for it. But I understand, and I do want to represent here. But could I just illustrate something there on what I probably could have been more politically correct on with how I said? You only wanted to spend 60 or 70 grand, right? Yeah. They'll go back to that, yeah, real quick. Okay, and this house is 110, correct? Yeah. So 70 from 110, and you immediately forget about the 10,000, 60 to 7. This is where you got to not listen. Only deal with the 70 to the 110. So that's 70 to 110,000. That's 40 grand, right? We're 40 grand over budget, but it's pretty much got what you want, right? Yeah. I'm asking questions. I'm building value. And they probably know where I'm going. Okay, if they bought anything above the size of a Gillette razor before in their life, they probably got a pretty good idea of where I'm going on this. And you probably do too. But the fact is, we're going to do the reduced to the ridiculous close. Okay, so $40,000 at today's interest rates, even if that's a 5% interest rate, which it's probably not. If I remember your pre-qual letter that you showed me, you were really around 3.75 or 4%. But 5% makes for easy math. 5% of $40,000 is $200. $200 a month. I'm not great at math, but if we had a 30-day month, isn't that somewhere around $6 a day. So basically, for less than the price of 2 Starbucks, could you afford this house? You won't always get a yes there, okay? But that's what's called the reduced to the ridiculous. And sometimes you're not even dealing with that much. Let's say it was a $275,000 house, and the house was $350 that we were showing them. At that, there, $75,000 at a 5% interest rate is about a $350 house or $350 a month payment. Okay, so you're looking at $350 for $3, so $10, 11, 12, about $11.50. Okay, $10 a day. Okay, for the cost of one fast food meal, could you afford that house? And again, nothing is 100% assured. But as we go through this, and I have had times where we don't hear everything, but we hear something. Have you ever had a spouse say, honey, you said we could go 320? And don't jump right on it. If they ever throw something like that out there, don't jump right and say, folks, I want you to be comfortable. This is where when you hear that you're this far away, do not jump right on it. Okay, let me just back off for a minute here. I'll say to them, I appreciate that, but realize there is still some room to negotiate. Most sellers do not, if they say 350, mean it absolutely. It's not always etched in stone. It might be, but not always. And you see, I'm doing that little takeaway. It might be, but I'm not taking their full money. But now we've got it down from 320 to 350. That's a probable yes, somewhere in there. 320 sounds like a yes. Maybe we didn't get that. We're only at 300. Okay, so 275 to 350 is about $350 a month on it, and that's a little over $10 a day. But what if we negotiated? What if we offered them 340? Notice I'm not going down to what it is, because if I'll tell you, if I said 3.25, that husband's going to come back and say, let's offer him 3. And the wife's not going to fight him, knowing that they talked about 320 was their top bump price that they would go to on the perfect house. So I'm not going to get that. Barely move. What if we offered him 340? Okay. And so I've gone through the reduced to ridiculous. I'm kind of going a little off script there. I did the happy wife close right after the embarrassment. Okay, I did the happy wife close. So let's move these. Okay, the don't hear everything close is where we don't want to jump right on it. Okay, and I talked about that. We ignore it. We do want to represent them. I'm not just trying to feign friendship. Okay, people, because I'll tell people very early on, probably right after the snooker close, somewhere in there, which usually happens right when you first people, you find you like me. That's a very common phrase that I'll throw in with people. They've told me we're just looking. I've said, well, that's fine, but if you did find the perfect house, what would it look like? Okay, and then somewhere in there, this is usually my pivot. Okay, I do. If you find you like me, we're probably going to not only do business together, but we're going to end up being friends over a long period of time. Most of my clients that end up buying or selling something through me, they do that because they like me. Doesn't work for everybody, but I like it and my clients like it. And it's a great pivot to use to make them realize you're a decent guy or gal. So don't hear everything close, okay? And sometimes I'll go back. Now, remember when I met you guys and I said that if you like me, that we'll probably be friends for a long time? This is one of those points, and I want you to know I hear what you're saying. I've heard the 275, I've heard the 300, I even heard that 320 that I pretended I didn't hear, okay? But I'm here to represent you. Okay, so let me ask you, if they wanted 350 and you're at 300-ish, because I don't want to take that whole 320, but you're at 300-ish. What kind of price would you like to offer on this home that if they said yes to, we could quit looking? That's kind of a standard close. And that kind of builds up here. I've wrapped a couple things together. The clear objective close. Okay, the clear objective is you're a salesman. They know you're a salesman. You have put a product in front of them that they like, or is at least as close to them liking as can be found on the market. Hopefully you've ended up in the living room or the kitchen or wherever, hey Emily, wherever is the most favored beneficial item to them within that property. That's where you want to have this conversation if you can. If they say they want a house with a beautiful backyard, go for the close in the backyard. If they say that they really want a fantastic kitchen, that's where you want to close it. You're going to position and maneuver them to that place. And some people might hear me talk like this and say, yeah, but you're being a bit of a salesman. You're doing this and that. He's like, well, you knew I was a salesman when you met me. Okay, and quite frankly, I'm not just a salesman. Because my objective, and this is again one of the things that I'll bring up with people somewhere right in here, is my objective is to not only sell you a home, but help you find a home you don't want to sell again. Sell again. And I will tell this to people, okay, early on in the conversation. Look, yeah, I want to sell you a home, but I don't want to just sell you any home. I want a customer that is so happy with the home that when we finally hand you the keys or sign the deed or whatever it is, whatever is that pivotal moment in your mind, Mr. Buyer and seller, or Mr. Buyer and spouse, that when we have that moment, that you remark to each other, to me, I can't believe we did this. I can't ever imagine selling this home. Because if I hit that nail on the head that well, I've really done my job. And that's when you're more likely to send me referrals. That's when you're more likely to put it on Facebook, what you've done and how proud you are of your new purchase. Now, you couldn't believe you could ever have a home like that before. That's what I want to do. It's when I hear those types of words that I know I've represented you well. That's part of the clear objective close. Okay, and I've probably done this sometimes even when they've told me, okay, that, look, 320 was really our top dollar, okay, for this home. I don't think we can do it. And I've gone through the reduced or the ridiculous close. I've done the happy wife close. I did that gentle and quick takeaway, okay, about wouldn't you be happier if, okay, or don't you want a happier spouse if, on that there. And they finally give me the price. I sometimes do not take people's offer and immediately rush to fill out a purchase contract. I remind them that I'm doing this to make them happy. And I say, okay, and this is where I ask them again one more time. I say, so if we get them to take the 320 or 340 or whatever price they've said, it doesn't really matter the price at this point. The point is they're committing. And once you get that commitment from them together and they look each other in the eyes, and then you write it down on paper and you take that 15 or 20 minutes right there in front of them and you fill out the blanks and you let them see it, whether you're doing it in the office or in the kitchen or in a Zoom meeting or however you're doing that, it makes it real. Okay, and I think I can move the choose your leader close. Chose your leader, choose your leader. And the clear objective close is probably a better one to find on. I started with the choose your leader when I asked who's the decision maker. Clear objective close is where we don't jump on the price. Okay, a car salesman who gets you on the lot who says this $25,000 or $35,000 car, what would you buy it for, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer? And you say 20,000 or 32.5 or whatever your price is. You know, what you're shopping cars, you have some ballpark in mind, or how much a month would you pay it or whatever it is. And then they immediately turn and say, okay, follow me. Okay, that's too fast of a close in my mind for this. I mean, I've done it before, and in some time periods, I could tell you where I've closed people in the first 5-10 minutes of showing them a home, and I've been able to do it. But most times, and that's what I want to deal with here, most times it takes a relationship. Most times you have to build a friend, which is what we've done here. We've asked them in the beginning, who's the leader? We've let them say, I'm not in the market right now. We've asked them questions about what the ideal home would look like, and then we've done the pivot where if you find you like me, we've listened to the bump or we've asked for a bump. Okay, we walk them through the I'm here to not only sell you a home, but I want you to find a home you don't want to sell again. We've done the ownership, the embarrassed close, the happy wife close. We've reduced the difference in the price of what they want to buy to a manageable amount. And we've not heard everything. And then we give a clear objective on closing. It seems like I lost a couple of people out there. I hope you guys are still within hearing range. But I'm pretty much wrapping up. And I rambled on a bit as I did this, so I appreciate you listening to me while I did. But anybody have any questions on anything? And we can go back through any part of it. Alex or Blair, anything I can answer for you guys?
No, it's I am just, it's very interesting how you have names for all the closings. I probably do some of that stuff. I just didn't know what kind of closing the name was, but it's interesting. So thank you. Very interesting.
I'll tell you a very simple story that most of you have heard before, and so I'll do it quick. But when I was a young salesman, okay, at about 24 years old, I was selling cars on Harbor Boulevard in Costa Mesa. And that was my first real sales job where it was 100% commission. And somewhere around 8, 9, 10 months in, and I had some ups and downs. I was like never really number one, but I wasn't bottom of the pack either as I jumped in. I was for lack of a better word, a mediocre salesman. You know, and I took my highs and my lows and I survived and I kept doing it. And then I hit a low unlike any other. Okay, 24 years old. I'm renting a room at the beach in Newport, and 1 month I only make $400. My rent was $450. Okay, plus I needed gas and money for food to eat, okay, and toilet paper and the other necessities of life. I mean, electricity and gas, cable TV. You know, I needed much more than $400. I had $0 in the bank, okay, at that point in my life. And I had to go to my roommates, okay. I was the youngest guy in the house at 24. All the other guys are like in their 30s to 45, somewhere in there. They let me move in as a younger guy because they liked me. And while we got along great, they turned to me and they said, Eric, we don't pay your rent. But I'll tell you what, we're going to cover you for 1 month. But if you don't come up with this month and next month's rent in the next 30 days, we're putting your stuff on the curb and you're out of here. And that like made an Adam's apple, you know, an apple in my Adam's apple about the size, well, of an apple. And it really drew the line in the sand for me, okay, of what it's going to take to survive as a salesperson. And so that's when I first picked up the book, The Secrets of Closing the Sale. I've read this book at least 4 times in my life. And there are so many closes for it, that closes in it, that if you like that sort of thing, it's a real eye-opener because he does a really good job of describing situations and closes. And there is a name for just about every, not only close, but action. Things like the pivot, the introduction, the meet and greet, okay, the close, you know, the follow-up. These are all phrases that as salespeople we've heard before. But if you'll learn them, you could sit there and build a conversation out of very gentle, very polite, but very direct closes that would walk any person through a conversation and has a high likelihood. Nothing is 100%, but you can increase your likelihood of closing a sale. And that's what I try to do. That's what I try to teach. And I hope that's what you guys pick up from me. But if you ever want to do any homework, I'll tell you, this is my Bible. It's 300 or 400 pages with, what's it say? 700 sales questions, dozens of persuasion procedures, and over 100 specific closes that are in there. So,
Eric?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're good. You're good now. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just going to say the things that, you know, are always great, and you mentioned them, were the, imagine this, picture this. Those are always so powerful for people to kick in that part of their brain, because they can imagine and visualize themselves being there. And just those key words, imagine or picture this, really kick that in. And then the second thing is, when in doubt, pretend like you're playing Jeopardy, everything in the form of a question. You know what I mean? Nobody can argue with the question.
It's the truth. The question is a key to closing a sale. And when you feel a sale slipping away, that's the perfect time to ask a question. So the more you can load yourself with questions in different sales scenarios, and those are closes, each one of those questions, the better a salesman you'll be. When it comes time to do the final ask to buy in any situation, if you can stick in for at least 3 closes, you're better than the average agent. If you can do 5 or more, you are a phenomenal agent. So think about that. And sometimes if you don't know what question to ask, and I'll tell you, I've done this. This was told to me by an older car sales guy when I was in that business. He said, if you don't know what to ask permission to ask a question. It's a question in itself, right? But it buys you 15 seconds, which in brain time can be a long time. It buys you 15 seconds to come up with that question. Yeah. Anyways, I got to wrap up. We've got some other people in the office here, and I need to share the space. You're probably hearing a little background noise here, and it's not right for me to shut them. It's their office.
Hey,
too.
thank you so much, Eric. Thank you for
You're
everything.
welcome, guys. Thank you for attending today. I really
Have a great
appreciate
day, everybody.
Bye,
Take care.
everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Ciao.
Bye, Arthur.